it's officially supposed to start on Ram Navami, which is in 5 days from now. But I'm just doing this in advance so that, because I'm usually late for everything. So I thought I might as well be early for something for once. And before giving any proper introduction or anything, I want to just start with the words of our acharyas. And then in the next video, I can try to explain the verse in my own words to whatever little capacity I have. And then we can try to memorize it together. But I just wanted to start off with the words of our acharyas, of my Param Gurudev, Shishimad Bhakti Prajñāna Keśava Gosvāmī. So we can commence our program by first doing Jai Dvani. I'll say it now. Jai Shishi Guru Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari Shishi Radha Vinod Bihari Ju Ki Jai. Shri Govinda Gopinath Maran Mohan Ju Ki Jai. Nitila Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtara Shata Shishimad Śrīla Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Mahārāja Śrīla Gurudeva Ki Jai. Nitila Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtara Shata Shishimad Śrīla Bhakti Vedanta Vaman Goswami Mahārāja Ki Jai. Nitila Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtara Shata Shishimad Śrīla Bhakti Vedanta Swami Mahārāja Śrīla Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nitila Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtara Shata Shishimad Śrīla Bhakti Prajñāna Keśava Goswami Mahārāja Ki Jai. Nitila Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtara Shata Shishimad Śrīla Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nitila Pravishta Maha Bhagavat Śrīla Gorksharas Babaji Mahārāja Ki Jai. Nitila Pravishta Śrīla Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai. Nitila Pravishtam Vishnupad Śrīla Bhakti Śrīla Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Śrīla Jagannath Das Babaji Mahārāja Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Gauḍīya Guru Varga Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanat Śrīla Baldevi Jibhushan Prabhu Ki Jai. Śrīla Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Nartam Srinivas Shamananda Prabhu Trai Ki Jai. Śrīla Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Patadasha Gunath Sharda Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda Ki Jai. Namachay Śrīla Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Kshetra Mandala Gaura Mandala Braja Mandala Mathura Vrindavan Tham Ki Jai. Sarva Abhishta Pradata Giriraj Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Radha Kunda Shama Kunda Ki Jai. Shri Muna Devi Ganga Devi Ki Jai. Shri Tulsi Maharani Brenda Devi Ki Jai. Shri Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Shri Purnamasi Yogamaya Ki Jai. Shri Gopeshwar Mahadev Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Samagata Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shinitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo. And by the time you see this video, it will probably be Ram Nomi. So Shri Ramachandra Ki Jai. Shri Sita Devi Ki Jai. Shri Lakshman Ki Jai. Bharat Shatrughna Ki Jai. Shri Kaushalya Maya Ki Jai. Kaikeyi Maya Ki Jai. Sumitra Maya Ki Jai. Shri Ayodhya Dham Ki Jai. Shri Dasharath Maharaj Ki Jai. Hanuman Ki Jai. Okay. So, let me share my screen. And yes, I just thought it'd be most auspicious for me not to even say anything, but just to start with our Acharya's words. So
it's 10 o'clock.
In the next video, I'll give an introduction and all that. So this is an article by my Param Gurudev, Śrīla Bhakti Keśava Goswāmī Mahārāja. When was it written? It was, I don't have it here. Anyhow, it was written in 1949, I think, if I remember correctly. And it was in the 3rd issue of the Gauḍīya Patrikā. The original form of Bhagavan descended during this age of quarrel and hypocrisy as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to deliver all the living entities. Śrīla Rūpa Gosvāmī, who is Priya Swarup, the very embodiment of everything dear to him, and who is foremost among those who establish the deepest wishes of his heart, has revealed the symptoms of Uttama Bhakti, the utmost culmination of devotional service to Krishna. So this is the verse that we're learning. Anyābhilāṣitā-śūnyaṁ jnana karmadhyānavritam anukulena krishnanu shilanam bhaktir uttama. This is from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the 11th verse from the beginning. And I'll just very quickly go through it. And we'll go through it again in more detail, but just anyābhilāṣitā-śūnyaṁ. So anya means other. Abhilash means desire, and ita means prone. So, and shunyam means not at all, like completely devoid. So completely not devoid of any propensity for having any other anya abhilash, any other desire. Zero other desire. Shunyam means zero, anya means other, and abhilash means desire. Then jnana karmadhyānavritam. It is not covered, anavritam, not covered by jnana or by karma and adi and so on. And this uttama bhakti is anukulena. It is filled with, it is only for Krishna's benefit. It's completely favorable to Krishna, full of a mood of loving affection for Krishna. Anukulena. And Krishnānuṣīlanam. And it's perpetual ardent endeavoring that is completely anukulya, for Krishna alone. And anu means perpetual. So perpetual ardent endeavor, shilanam, for Krishna. Bhaktir uttama, that is uttama bhakti. Right. Oh, there's a word for word here. So anyābhilāṣitā, prone to selfish ulterior desires. Śūnyaṁ, devoid. Jnana, knowledge. Karma, fruit of work. Adi, and so on. Anavritam, not eclipsed, not covered. Anukulena, through genuine kindness to him. Krishna, anu, perpetual. Shilanam, ardent endeavor. Bhaktir uttama, the utmost culmination of bhakti, devotional service to Krishna. So this is the verse we have to memorize. And if you're in the, anyways, I'm going to just read. Perpetual ardent endeavor meant exclusively for Sri Krishna and performed out of genuine kindness to him, when neither prone to any selfish ulterior desires, nor eclipsed by impersonal knowledge, fruit of work, or any other occupation, is known as uttama bhakti. And for this word anukulena, through genuine kindness to him, there is a footnote for this word kindness. Let's see. Kindness is a gentle, sympathetic, a gentle, sympathetic, or benevolent disposition, showing consideration for others. Synonyms include affection, lovingness, fondness, intimacy, agreeableness, pleasantness, gratefulness, thankfulness, softness, and tenderness, based on the definition of kind found in the Oxford Dictionary. So that's what they use for the word anukulya. Anukulena. The sadhak who carefully reflects upon and studies this verse under the guidance and care of the followers of Śrīla Rūpa Gosvāmī will know the meaning of bhakti with lucid clarity, and indeed, he will attain realization of bhakti. Okay, just checking it. The perfect definition. The statement of Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, while all other forms of Godhead are expansions, Krishna is personally the original form of Godhead. This statement of Srimad Bhagavatam is accepted as the defining statement in any deliberation on Sambandha Tattva, or existential relationships. Similarly, the verse in hand, the definition of Uttama Bhakti that we are now considering, must be accepted as the defining statement in relation to Abhidheya Tattva, the means to the ultimate end, namely Krishna Prem. It is said, Sa-cha-niyame niyamakarini. The factual definition of something is the one that exceeds all others in authority and is thus regarded as the most prominent. Fruit of workers, speculative philosophers, mystics, those who offer the results of their work to God, sense enjoyers, whimsical religionists, and members of the various cults, all propagate their own conceptions of bhakti. This verse, from which the symptoms of bhakti to Krishna can be derived, has utterly subverted their opinions, understandings, and inferences by proving these to be inconsistent, flawed, and greatly misled. Intrinsic symptoms and boundary symptoms. Perpetual ardent endeavor meant exclusively for Sri Krishna and performed out of genuine kindness to him, when neither prone to any selfish, ulterior desires, nor eclipsed by impersonal knowledge, fruit of work, or any other occupation, is known as Uttama Bhakti. The symptoms described in the second half of this verse, Anukulyena Krishnānushīlanam, directly comprise Bhakti's own form. Hence, these symptoms are called the Swarup Lakshan of Bhakti. These symptoms described in the first half of this verse, anyābhilāṣitā-śūnyaṁ jnana karma anāvritam, demarcate the boundary of Bhakti. Hence, these symptoms are called the Tatashta Lakshan of Bhakti. And so there's a footnote here. The literal meaning of the words Swarup, Tatashta, and Lakshan are as follows. Swa means own, or intrinsic. Rup means form. Tata means boundary. Sta means situated on. And Lakshan means symptom or symptoms. So the second half of the verse is describing Bhakti's own form, the Swarup, the symptom of Bhakti, the Lakshan, the symptoms of Bhakti's own form, of what Bhakti is. And the first half of this verse explains what's situated on the boundary of Bhakti, basically what Bhakti isn't. So the first half is what Bhakti is not, and the second half is what Bhakti is. The Swarup Lakshan and the Tatashta Lakshan. All right. A technical analysis of interpreting the verb root shil. There is no verb in this verse, but the verb root shil within the noun anushilanam is perfectly obvious. So this is in the Swarup Lakshan, what bhakti is in the second half of this verse. Krishna anushilanam. So now he's explaining anushilanam. The word anushilanam is formed by qualifying the verb root shil with the prefix anu. In Sanskrit grammar, there are 10 ways to interpret a verb, technically called ganas. Within some of these ganas, headed by the gana called churagana, the verb root shil is interpreted as repeated or permanent exercise or discipline, abhyas. By this interpretation, shil is conceived of as having progress or engagement, pravritti, as its essential characteristics. So, abhyas, permanent exercise or discipline. So it's having progress of engagement, pravritti. In contrast with the other gans headed by the gan called bhva-gan, the same verb root shil is interpreted as profound stillness or concentration of thought or intent, or intense contemplation of a particular object, samadhi. By this interpretation, shil is conceived of as having withdraw or disengagement, nivritti, as its essential characteristics. All right. So one meaning of shil is abhyas, permanent exercise, which shows having progress, having a progress or engagement. And the second second interpretation of Shil is samadhi, complete, profound stillness of concentration of thought or intent contemplation. This shows disengagement, active disengagement as this essential characteristic. So, pravritti and nivritti. Active efforts and emotional states of being. The expression of bhakti is accomplished both through active efforts, cheshta, and emotional states of being, bhav. The verb root shil accounts for both of these features of bhakti. And there's a footnote here. Note from the preceding section that abhyas can be considered an action, and samadhi can be considered an emotional state of being. So samadhi refers to bhava, an emotional state of being. Abhyas is action. Pravritti and nivritti. Active engagements and active disengagements. Continuing on, the active feature itself of Anushilanam for the sake of Sri Krishna is expressed through one's body, one's mind, and one's words. Each of these methods of expression is always seen in the two forms of engagements, pravritti rup and disengagements, nivritti rup. Engaging in the 9 prominent limbs of bhakti, which constitute its very form, through one's body, mind, and words, is Krishna Anushilanam in the form of active engagement, pravritti atmaka cheshta. On the other hand, resolutely abstaining from offending Krishna's holy name or the process of serving Krishna is Krishna Anushilanam in the form of an active disengagement, nivritti atmaka cheshta. And is there a chart here? Yes, there is a chart. So, Shilanam is ardent endeavor by mind, body, words, and heart. And that is comprised of bhav, of our emotions, endeavoring by body, mind, and word, and heart through our emotions towards Krishna, through our feelings towards Krishna, and through cheshta, through active efforts, which comprise of engagements and disengagements, the things that we do and the things that we, are engagements, and things that we avoid, that we disengage ourselves from. It's active disengagements, active engagements, and active disengagements. So all that together is Shilanam, ardent endeavor by mind, body, words, and heart. All right. Perpetual and without obstruction. The prefix anu, Anushilanam, the prefix anu can be used to mean following, accompanying, repeatedly, or perpetually. And Sri Hari, so anu can be active endeavors, Shilanam, which means following, like under the guidance of Vaishnavas, following. Also, anu can mean, I don't understand this accompanying part, but repeatedly, so that it's perpetual, without obstruction. These ardent endeavors are ceaseless, constant. That's the meaning of the word anu. And Sri Harinamrita Vyakaran, Śrīla Jiva Gosvāmī comments on the use of the prefix anu in the context of Krishna Pravachaniya, Panini's karma, as opposed to Panini's karma Pravachaniya, which is a term for certain prepositions of particles not connected with a verb, but generally governing a noun, either separated from it or forming a compound with it. That's way, I'm not smart enough to understand that. Okay. Lakshana vipse itam bhuteshvabhir bhage pariprati anureshu saharte chahine tupascha katyat. From Sri Harinam Vyakaran 4.107. The characteristics that are repeated in each of the prefixes pari, prati, and parts of abhi, especially toward and severally, or one after another, are also included in anu. But it is to be mentioned that anu also exclaims accompaniment and inferiority, like the prefix upa. Anyways, I don't understand that part, but gotta move on. The prefix anu is used in this. The prefix anu is used in this verse with the verb root shil to convey perpetually and ardently endeavoring. In other words, the ardent endeavors, the shilanam, discussed in this definition of Uttama Bhakti must be perpetual and without obstruction. Furthermore, such perpetual ardent endeavors must be exclusively for Sri Krishna. When Anushilanam in both of its features, namely active efforts and emotional states of being, is meant exclusively for Sri Krishna, then it is part of Bhakti. Hence, Krishna Anushilanam. Flawed definitions. Pleasing active engagements exclusively meant for Sri Krishna is indeed Bhakti. It stands to reason that perpetual ardent endeavor, Anushilanam, must be immediately pleasing to the person it is meant for. Thus, it would seem we have discovered that the definition of Bhakti Thus, it would seem that we've discovered the definition of Bhakti and the term Krishna Anushilanam itself. And there's a footnote. The definition presently under discussion is perpetual ardent endeavor meant exclusively for Sri Krishna, along with the implication that such perpetual ardent endeavor must immediately gratify the person it is meant for. So it seems like, yeah, everything is just in the words Krishna Anushilanam. What's the need of anything else? However, this symptom of bhakti is tainted by two flaws, two doshas. In some respects, it extends to include too much, ati vyapti dosh. And in other respects, it does not extend far enough, avyapti dosh. Those symptoms that are not tainted by the faults of underextension, avyapti, overextension, ati vyapti, or inconsistency, are the correctly derived symptoms of bhakti. So this is why we can't just define bhakti as Krishna Anushilanam. Overextension. So this is explaining the ati vyapti dosh, overextension, including too much into the definition. If bhakti were defined solely as Krishna Anushilanam, perpetual ardent endeavor meant exclusively for Sri Krishna, or to please Sri Krishna, then, as we will see, it would serve to establish even spiteful demons like Kamsa's most fearsome wrestlers, Chanura and Mushtika, as devotees. Herein, the symptoms of bhakti have been extended to include too much. In other words, ati vyapti dosh has arisen. When Sri Krishna heard the challenging words of Chanura and Mushtika upon entering Kamsa's royal wrestling arena, the joy of heroism, viraras, surged within him. Whenever a warrior, I have a hard time saying that word. Whenever a warrior receives blows from his opponent, he is thrilled. Thus, when Krishna received repeated blows from Chanura and Mushtika, who perpetually endeavored to attack him, they did Krishna Anushilanam for attacking him, he naturally experienced the happiness that arises from heroism. Should one then deem Chanura and Mushtika to be bhaktas? Since their endeavors were meant for Sri Krishna's undoing and not at all for his enjoyment, no one will ever conclude that they are bhaktas. So even though Krishna was getting enjoyment out of it, since their mood was not to give Krishna's pleasure, their intention wasn't to give Krishna pleasure, This is not, they are not bhaktas. They are not those who do bhakti. Under extension. Conversely, defining bhakti simply as pleasing to Shri Krishna would imply that someone who causes Krishna any displeasure at all is not a bhakta, and that his actions are not expressions of bhakti. So we can't say that bhakti is just endeavors towards Shri Krishna. But we also can't say that bhakti is trying to please Krishna, because it's not always trying to please Krishna. For example, once when Mother Yashoda was breastfeeding baby Krishna, the milk she had been heating began to boil over. At once she removed Shri Krishna from her lap, much to his displeasure, and ran to save the milk. Krishna was so enraged that, biting his lips, he smashed a nearby clay pot that was full of yogurt. He was so intensely unhappy at being denied of his mother's breast milk to his full satisfaction that he burst into tears. When Mother Yashoda denied Shri Krishna full satisfaction, he was not even slightly pleased with her. Hence, in this case, defining bhakti as Krishnanushīlanam alone prevents the definition from extending to include these actions. In other words, a vyakti dosh has arisen. Mother Yashoda is the presiding goddess of immaculate Prem Bhakti and Vatsalya Ras, parental love of God. Oh, and by the way, there's going to be a chart which will make all this, what we're reading, very clear, and you'll be able to catch it in a second. We'll get there. So Mother Yashoda is the presiding goddess of immaculate Prem Bhakti and Vatsalya Ras. Her every endeavor is for the sake of serving Shri Krishna. In this pastime, she had thought to herself, my breast milk alone will not fully nurture Shri Krishna, but the milk on the stove, which is now boiling over, will protect his life. Although Mother Yashoda was the queen of Vraj and was always surrounded by unlimited servants and maids, she would personally milk the best cows and heat their excellent milk. Then, with her own hands, she would prepare the finest butter for Krishna. Even if I displease Krishna for the time being, she had thought, I must save this milk for him. Thoughts like this would cause her Prem Bhakti to swell to exceptional heights and thereafter permeate all of her actions. Her actions can never be anything but bhakti. Now, genuine kindness to him. So, the word anukulyena prevents the faults of underextension, avyapti dosh, and overextension, ativyapti dosh, from tainting the definition of bhakti. Because it's not just perpetual. This word anukulya means with a favorable mood towards Krishna, wanting the benefit of Krishna, wanting, acting out of kindness towards Krishna. And so if you just had Krishnanushīlanam, you could think that, Chanur and Mushika are making Krishna happy, and Mother Yashoda is not making Krishna happy. So Chanur and Mushika are doing bhakti, but Mother Yashoda isn't, because they're making Krishna happy, she's not making Krishna happy. But this word anukulya prevents that misunderstanding. The adjective anukul, kind, becomes anukulyena, by means of kindness, in the instrumental case. And there's a footnote here. The instrumental case is expressed by the inflection ena in Sanskrit with the prepositions by means of or with in English. For example, in perceived directly by means of one's own eye, or perceived directly with one's own eye. The noun eye is used in the instrumental case. So by means of or with. So with a favorable mood, by means of a favorable mood. Okay. Sorry. If someone aspires to perform Krishna-anushīlanam, perpetual ardent endeavors meant exclusively for Sri Krishna, then he must first become anukul, genuinely kind to him. It must be his sole ambition to please and satisfy Sri Krishna, and he must completely expel even the slightest trace of hostility, pratikulata, from his heart. Even if someone's Krishna-anushīlanam temporarily seems to be entirely favorable for Sri Krishna, if it is not utterly devoid of any underlying adversity and any craving for personal gratification, then it is not bhakti. Although his endeavors may momentarily please his worshipful Lord, if they harbor any personal selfish ulterior motives or any motivation besides pleasing the Lord, he will fail to procure the actual fruit of bhakti, namely superlative love of Godhead, Prim. Instead, the result he obtains will simply correspond to his underlying motivations. This part is so important, this quote. It's my favorite part of this article. Many of the disciples of our Srila Gurudev, Jagat Guru Paramaradya Tama, Srila Prabhupada, gave their bodies, minds, words, and wealth to assist in fulfilling his heart's deepest ambitions. Although he was immensely pleased by their service, or anushilan, it is seen that some of them, even after serving him in this way for so many years, were willing to abandon him, their own guru, Guru Tyag, and that others have developed Guru Bhog, the propensity to exploit him. That is, instead of striving to imbibe the ideal and character of our Sri Guru Padma, who is perpetually wrapped in bhajan, they have simply imitated his external activities and audaciously costumed themselves as gurus. Not even the first stage of bhakti has manifested in their hearts. If we contemplate the cause for this, we find that as they served him, they failed to maintain the attitude, Srila Gurudev will be pleased by accepting my service, and pleasing him gives me life. Since they served him with many other motives and not exclusively with the hope of pleasing him, they were cheated out of obtaining the principal fruit of serving a sadhu and have instead attained whatever they secretly desired. If someone's purpose is genuine, then as bhakti appears in his heart, all its symptoms, which are mentioned in the scriptures, will manifest in him, and all hankerings and aspirations opposed to bhakti will gradually diminish. Pleasing Srila Gurudev gives me life. This is such an important instruction. And for us, that's the first stage of following this verse, is applying it first to our Srila Gurudev. And then he'll turn it into becoming, Uttama Bhakti for Krishna. So this is, yeah. Symptoms identical with bhakti. In our investigation thus far, we have seen that the use of the noun anushilanam, perpetual ardent endeavors, is far from meaningless. Surely, therefore, we cannot assume that the adjective anukulya can sufficiently define bhakti on its own. As we have seen, on the one hand, perpetual ardent endeavor meant exclusively for Sri Krishna, Krishna-anushīlanam, does not qualify as bhakti if it is not free from hostility. And on the other hand, even if one's Krishna-anushīlanam displeases Sri Krishna, if it is devoid of hostility, it may rightfully be called bhakti. Hence, while simply pleasing Sri Krishna may not always be bhakti, Krishna-anushīlanam as devoid of hostility certainly is bhakti. Furthermore, without a consideration of the active efforts and emotional states of being involved with the anushīlanam, the mere absence of hostility will not be bhakti. For example, pots and other inert objects harbor no hostility toward Sri Krishna, but due to their insentience, They cannot make any active effort for Sri Krishna's sake, nor express any emotion for him. Therefore, the two terms anukulyena and Krishnānushīlanam together verily express the intrinsic symptoms of bhakti. And there's, now we can look at the chart. So, both of these terms are necessary for bhakti. If you just have anukul without Krishnānushīlanam, kind or devoid of any hostility towards Krishna, then you could be a pot. But if you're just Krishnānushīlanam, you're just, making perpetual ardent endeavors meant exclusively for Sri Krishna, that also, you can become Chanura or Mushtika. But if you have Anukul and Krishnānushīlanam together, Anukulina Krishnānushīlanam together, you're filled with desires of wanting the benefit of Krishna, completely favorable towards Krishna, kind, devoid of any hostility towards Krishna, and you're making perpetual ardent endeavors towards Sri Krishna, then that's Mother Yashoda. Then that's bhakti. That's the sarup. This is the sarup lakshan of bhakti. This is the real form of bhakti. Okay. Where are we? Okay, there. It has been stated in the scriptures, tad abhinatve sati tad bodhakatvam sarupa lakshanam. That which remains identical with an object while comprehension of it to arise is called the object's sarup lakshan, its intrinsic symptom, which causes comprehension and is identical with the object. It's identical with the object? Okay, that's easy. The joint term anukulyena Krishnānushīlanam, the extraordinary nature of perpetual ardent endeavor meant exclusively for Sri Krishna and endowed with the characteristic of kindness to him, anukulya, allows one to comprehend the meaning of Krishna bhakti. At the same time, anukulyena Krishnānushīlanam is truly identical with Krishna bhakti itself. Hence, anukulyena Krishnānushīlanam is the sarup lakshan, the intrinsic symptom of Krishna bhakti. Symptoms distinct from bhakti. Now we will consider the two boundary symptoms, the tatashta lakshan. Tad bhinatve sati tad bodhakatvam tatashta lakshanam. That which remains distinct from an object while causing comprehension of it to arise is called the object's tatashta lakshan, the boundary symptom. So sarup lakshan is what is identical with the thing, and tatashta lakshan is what is distinct from the thing. So what it is and what it isn't. Sarup lakshan is what it is, tatashta lakshan is what it isn't. And the first half of the verse, anyābhilāṣitā-śūnyaṁ jnana karma dhyanavratam, the terms anyābhilāṣita and jnana karma adi describe uttam bhakti through their distinction from it. Hence, they are the tatashta lakshan, the boundary symptoms of uttama bhakti. Not prone to any selfish ulterior motives. The purpose of the phrase anyābhilāṣitā-śūnyaṁ is to reveal that while constantly engaged in the search for Sri Krishna's happiness, one must exclusively wish to obtain bhakti without harboring any selfish ulterior motives, like the aspiration to attain celestial or bodily pleasures. It is very significant that the term anyābhilāṣita has been used instead of anyābhilasha. While the prayers of some devotees may at times appear to be in the form of anyābhilasha, in other words, motivated by some desire other than Sri Krishna's happiness, they are still not prone to foster these other desires, anyābhilāṣita. I think an example of this, actually it's going to explain an example. To illustrate this point, consider one example. Sri Yudhishthira Maharaj yearned to become the emperor of the world in order to serve Sri Krishna. For this end, he supplicated Sri Krishna with his request to perform the Rajasuya Yajna. Actually, his apparent desire to be emperor was only anyābhilāṣ. But in fact, it was devoid of anyābhilāṣitā. It was an ulterior desire, but it wasn't prone. He wasn't prone to having ulterior desires. So his actual motivation was simply to have the necessary opulence to serve Sri Krishna in a way befitting the Lord's position. In other words, his aspiration to have sovereignty over the whole world was not motivated by a desire to achieve personal greatness. The word anyābhilāṣitā is comprised of the noun anyābhilāṣ, selfish ulterior motive, and the suffix nin, or ita, which means to foster. Thus, the nature of fostering selfish ulterior motives is called anyābhilāṣitā. Moreover, if a Shuddha Bhakta is faced with some imminent disaster, he may pray to Sri Bhagavan to save him. Although his prayer may appear to be anyābhilāṣ, it will not hinder his bhakti. So I think another example of this is Draupadi. When Draupadi was dragged into the assembly by Dushashan, and he started, ripping off her sari, and she was trying with her, she's trying to hold on, but then finally she just gave up and lifted her arms and surrendered to Krishna. She stopped, her own effort. So this might seem like an anyābhilāṣ. It's not desiring. It's not a desire for Krishna. She was trying to protect her own chastity and her own shame, her own dignity. So she prayed to Krishna. So her praying to Krishna in that way to save her might be anyābhilāṣ. It is an ulterior desire. But she's not prone to, she doesn't foster an ulterior desire. So it might arise, but it's not, perpetually in her. She's not prone to that. Anyways, I think that's clear, right? So not eclipsed. Perpetual endeavor in the form of active efforts and emotional states of being meant exclusively for Sri Krishna, performed out of genuine kindness to him, and uneclipsed by knowledge, jnana, or fruit of work, karma, is in fact uttama bhakti. In this context, jnana refers to the search for the impersonal Brahma. Karma refers to daily rituals, nitya karma, and rituals meant for specific occasions, naimatik karma, as outlined in the Smriti Shastras. And adi, literally and so on, refers to futile forms of renunciation, falgu vairagya, mystic yoga, ashtanga yoga, abhyas yoga, as delineated in Sankhya Shastra, the scriptures dealing with empiric enumeration of universal elements, and so forth. Basically everything else that's not karma and jnana. And that's not bhakti. It's like everything. All of the above disciplines are to be rejected by the sadhak because they eclipse his devotion and because their purpose is not even remotely meant to make the Lord happy. Through these disciplines, the sadhak can attain some supernatural powers, all of which are diametrically opposed to the longing search for Sri Krishna's happiness. Since these forms of jnana and karma thoroughly eclipse devotion, they have been forsaken. This is such an important point, because if we just do Krishna-nushilanam, Anukulya and Krishna-nushilanam, then we'll get lots of power. We'll get some supernatural powers. We'll be able to control people. We'll get tons of fame. We'll get lots of money. We'll get all these things. If we're not careful to do anyābhilāṣa, to become anyābhilāṣitā-śūnyaṁ and to become gyan karmadi anavrita. So it's not just about the positive, what we do, but we have to be careful about the negative. The word anavritam, which means not eclipsed, has been used in connection with gyan and karma instead of shunya, which means devoid of. The significance of this is that certain forms of both gyan and karma are integral parts of bhakti. Supremely pure gyan is present within bhakti as the search for one's worshipful deity, and as knowledge of the reality of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavat Tattva Gyan. So that's gyan, which is within bhakti. And what appears to be karma, literally action, is present within bhakti as serving the Supreme Lord by cleansing his temple, cooking for him, and so on. Factually, these activities are included among the 9 limbs of bhakti. They are not mundane karma. Had the phrase gyan karma adi shunya been used, which means devoid of gyan, karma, and so on, the aforementioned Vishuddha Bhakti Tattva Gyan, knowledge of the reality of supremely pure bhakti, as well as service to Bhagavan, would have also been forsaken, even though these forms of gyan and karma do not eclipse bhakti. In fact, they solely and indispensably nurture it. So it's not devoid of karma and gyan, it's just not covered by karma and gyan. It's not shunya, it's not, what is it? Anavritam, it's not covered. The highest perfection of bhakti. In our evaluation of the term Krishnānuṣīlanam, we must surely include Anuṣīlanam for Sri Krishna in any of his forms, like Ram and Nrsimha. Still, in light of this understanding, it would be most excellent if Śrīla Rūpa Gosvāmī, the original and most revered Gurupad Padma of the Gauḍīya Vaishnavas, had left some information of the utmost culmination of Uttama Bhakti within this perfectly derived definition. That culmination which is observed in the most exalted stages of the Gauḍīya Vaishnavas bhajan. Śrīla Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami was a most distinguished associate of Śrīla Rūpa Gosvāmī. Due to their great intimacy, he understood what was in Śrīla Rūpa Goswami's heart, and has therefore written Anukulena Sarvendriye Krishnānuṣīlanam within his translation of this verse. He has used the words sarvendriya, with all senses, in order to indicate the highest stage of bhakti. That is to say, it is impossible for anyone but the Vrajagopis who are in Madhur Ras, the mode of amorous love of Godhead, to perform Krishnānuṣīlanam with all their senses. It is impossible for those within Vatsalya Ras. It is even impossible for those within Vatsalya Ras, the mode of parental love of Godhead, to perform Krishnānuṣīlanam in its highest perfection with all of their senses. If you in the Rupa Shiksha in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Mahaprabhu gives instructions to Śrīla Rūpa Gosvāmī about all the different stages, from Shantaras to Dasyaras, Sakyaras, Vatsalya, and then finally culminating in Madhuras. And in Madhuras, he explains completely offering all of one's senses, one's everything, one's whole body to Sri Krishna. And that's only in Madhuras. The fruit of bhakti. Hearing, chanting, remembering, and so, like in each one of the rasas that he explained, there is one thing that was not included in the previous rasas. So, Shantaras had Krishna Nishta, and then Dasya Ras had Krishna Nishta plus, a feeling of wanting to serve Krishna, I think. And then Sakya Ras had the qualities of Shantaras and it had the qualities of Dasyaras, plus it had a feeling of intimacy with Krishna, friendship with Krishna. And then Vatsalya Ras had all those things, what was in Sakyaras, Dasyaras, and Shantaras, but it also had feelings of wanting to nurture Krishna. But then Madhuras had all those previous four things, plus it had completely giving Krishna one's full body. So that's what it's explaining. The fruit of bhakti. Hearing, chanting, remembering, and so on comprise the very form of Uttama Bhakti. If a sadhak performs his sadhan bhakti with the sole intention of making Sri Bhagavan happy, he will attain Krishna Prem, the fruit of his sadhan, very quickly and with ease. Thereafter, he will gradually advance through each successive stage of Prem. Therefore, in Srimad Bhagavatam 6.3.22, it is said, Bhakti Yogo Bhagavati Tam Nama Grahana Divi. Devotional service beginning with the chanting of the holy name of the Lord is the ultimate religious principle for the living entity in human society. There's a footnote here, that's from Śrīla Prabhupāda's translation. Here, although it suffices to simply say Bhakti Yoga, the word Bhagavati is included in order to convey that the activities of bhakti, such as chanting and remembering, are only known as Bhakti Yoga when they are performed exclusively for Sri Bhagavan's pleasure. Only this Bhakti Yoga can bestow Prem. In the activities of bhakti, such as chanting and remembering, if the activities of bhakti, such as chanting and remembering, are performed with any purpose other than pleasing Sri Bhagavan, they cannot be called Bhakti Yoga, and they will never bear the fruit of Krishna Prem. Translated from Sri Gauḍīya Patrikā, Year 1, Issue 3, 1949. All right. So that was a very in-depth, very complete explanation of this verse. And I'm going to make another video right now. I'm going to stop this video and then make a new video and just briefly explain the verse in a really easy to understand way so that you can easily memorize it. And then I'll make a third video. Wait, let me take off this share screen. Yeah, and so I'll make a second video. Yeah, and then I'll make a third video just going over the verse again and again, just saying it over and over again. I'd like to thank you for joining me. Jai Shri Radhe.